and welcome to my art vlog. If you haven't seen my intro video to see what I'm all about, you can go back and check it out here. But in short, I love dolphins, the ocean and art, and plan to use my skills in the later to promote my love and care for the former. I've started writing a few blogs about some of the other art I've created, but I decided to start creating and sharing videos of my art's progress too. I actually drew this one back in July last year, and was posting it in fragments on Instagram. But now here it is in its entirety in the one video, along with some, hopefully interesting, information about the subjects. For this one, I wanted to draw the two species of dolphin that call home the bay in which I live, grew up, and have most of my oceanic adventures, i.e. Port Phillip Bay, where we have a resident population of short-beaked common dolphins and a resident population of the unique Burranan dolphins. Burranans are the oldest of the Tursiops, or the bottlenose, species, and although they've been around for thousands of years, they were actually only identified as a separate species in 2011, although there is some dispute about them actually being classified as a separate species, despite various formal classifications. They're endemic to the southeastern waters of Australia, with a resident population of around 120 in Port Phillip Bay and a resident population of around 65 in the Gippsland Lakes. If you're in the city, you might even spot one of the Port Phillip Bay residents up the Yarra River. They've been known to venture up there from time to time. There's also a small number of transient males that can be found in parts of Tasmania and South Australia, but other than that, you won't find them anywhere else in the world. While the common dolphins, on the other hand, are pretty, common around the world, it's uncommon for a population of them to reside in a particular area, as they do in Port Phillip Bay. Usually they're migratory. They came into the bay back in 2005 and decided it was a good place to stay. There are currently around 35 or so commons that seem to permanently reside off the waters of the Mornington Peninsula, generally between Mount Eliza and Mount Martha, most of whom are females and calves. There's also a wider community that seem to travel in and out of the bay from Bass Strait. Both the Burranans and the commons are quite inquisitive and playful. They enjoy riding the bows of boats, surfing waves, and leaping out of the water in some pretty fun and different ways. The commons in particular are very acrobatic. They're actually one of the most acrobatic dolphin species in the world, and spend a lot more time at the surface than the Burranans. Sometimes dolphins can exhibit some pretty funny behaviours. The commons in Port Phillip Bay, for example, have been seen rubbing their skins against a blue blubber. I guess it's pleasurable. And then doing leaps out of the water, perhaps to then get rid of the stinging cells. Both species are also highly sociable. The Burranans often hang out in groups of up to 30, and the commons also generally form groups of 30 or so in the open ocean, but they also gather in large groups that number into the hundreds, and form megapods that can reach into the thousands and even tens of thousands. And just as we like to spend time with other animals, these dolphins like to hang out with other marine species like seals and whales, as well as other dolphins. In science lingo, this is called a mixed species association. In Port Phillip Bay, it's not all that uncommon to see the Burranans and the commons swimming alongside each other. Mixed species behaviour is generally associated with feeding, but sometimes they just seem to enjoy being in each other's company, although the Burranans have been known to be a bit aggressive towards the smaller commons on occasion. There's still much we don't know about dolphins, especially more recently discovered species like the Burranans, but studying them and learning as much as we can is really important in helping to better understand them. It helps get a better idea of what their needs are, how our actions and behaviours might be negatively affecting them, and what new laws and legislations need to be put in place to better protect them. We do already know that being a small and isolated population, and thus having a lack of genetic diversity, means the dolphins are at an even higher risk of extinction. And while it's cool having local dolphin residents, being surrounded by a big metropolis and a large human population does make them more exposed to anthropogenic threats. Rubbish we leave on the ground, balloons we release into the air, often end up in the bay, where the dolphins can become entangled in them or even mistake them for food. Even if they don't, the fish in the food chain below them likely could have. So the dolphins are going to be ingesting the harmful chemicals anyway, and unfortunately in higher amounts, as it accumulates as it goes up the food chain, of which dolphins are at the top. And then there's the issue of vessel traffic. Imagine you're a dolphin trying to go about your day, travelling, resting, feeding, socialising, playing, but you keep getting disturbed by speedboats and jet skis whizzing past, or trying to come up to you and interact. Imagine having super sensitive hearing in an environment where sound travels far and wide, and trying to communicate with other dolphins, or trying to hear the return echoes you sent out to help you navigate or find food. But the loud engines of so many fast-moving vessels is drowning it all out. Imagine trying to raise a calf amongst all that. If we're going to be going out into their home, then we need to be respectful and reduce our disturbance as much as possible. Make sure you're adhering to the regulations regarding approaching dolphins and other marine mammals. If the dolphins want to come up to you, then that's fine, and consider yourself pretty lucky. But in Port Phillip Bay, if you're out there on a speedboat, it's actually illegal to approach them within 100 metres. 300 metres if you're on a jet ski, and 30 metres if you're out there swimming. And make sure you keep going the way you initially intended, and don't divert just to try and be near the dolphins. You would also be really considerate to slow down in general. The faster you go, the louder your engine becomes. And by going slower, you might even notice things you hadn't noticed before. You could also give sailing a go, or if you have the money, invest in a quieter engine. Hopefully in the future there will be more regulations regarding vessel speed, not just around dolphins, but in the bay in general. It can be a lot of fun being out on the water, and there's so much out there to enjoy. But we need to keep in mind that when we are out there, we're sharing the space with the dolphins and other resident marine life. So being conscious of how we might be impacting them and how we can reduce that impact as much as truly possible is really important. Our fun and enjoyment shouldn't be at their expense. The dolphins know how to peacefully coexist with others in their environment, so it's time we remembered how to as well. And that's about this piece done. I'm pretty happy with the way this one turned out, and had a fairly pleasant time working on it. It was certainly a nice contrast to the piece I did before it, which as you can see was a lot more detailed. If you'd like to hear the story behind that one, I released a blog about it last week, which I'll put a link to in the description below. And if you'd like to buy the original of either of these artworks, I have them both up for sale. Again, see link below. And feel free to check out my other artwork through my website. I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe learned a thing or two. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for my next video where I show you my aquatic playground, Port Phillip Bay.